Hello and welcome back to everyone joining us online, everyone in the room. Very excited to introduce you to this workshop. This workshop will go for the full hour and we're planning on running it about 50 minutes. This is the plan. And then we're going to stop and have questions and answers and things like that. So online, in person, please feel free to add questions and comments to the Slido, and we'll come back to those at the end, or else we can just open it up at the end for questions as well. I'd very much like to introduce you. Sorry, first of all, my name is Rebecca and I'm chair. We have Kylie doing our online chairing as well for our Zoom participants. I've switched streams, so I haven't been in this room, so sorry if I haven't introduced myself yet. But now I'd like to very warmly welcome Mark Shelton from the University of Tasmania. So thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. G'day, hello, and hello to those of you online. My name is Mark Shelton, and I'm here today to talk to you about leveraging AI to create inclusive educational podcasts. But there won't be as much of me talking as there will be of you guys actually getting stuck in and creating some podcast scripts yourself. I thought I've got the spot after lunch on the last day. I better give these guys something to do, or things are going to get a bit strange in here. So, by way of acknowledgement, this whole presentation is an acknowledgement of not just country, but the way that our First Nations people have been teaching and learning for millennia. And although we're going to use podcasts today, which is a relatively new medium, if you think about using the spoken word and narrative to convey information and to pass important lessons down from one generation to another, then I don't think there's a better example on the planet than our First Nations people. So the entire presentation, to be frank, the fundamental principles are all an acknowledgement. Sorry, Ethan. And I have got Ethan under the pump. We're going to do some interesting stuff with the tech. So hopefully we'll see how we go. The agenda today, we're going to talk quickly about the AI conundrum, but we've spoken about that a lot in the different presentations over the past couple of days. We're going to talk about why podcasting as a solution, the three formats of podcasting that I'm going to introduce you to today. And then, as I say, the whole workshop component, that's going to be the main part of the presentation, where I'm going to throw to you and give you a chance to, have a bit of a muck around in small groups or on your own, online, whatever the case might be, and to create some podcast scripts. So the first question I'd like to ask, though, what are some of your concerns about incorporating AI into your content development? Or if you're a convert, what are some of the things that you hear from your peers about why they're reluctant to incorporate AI into their content development? Any takers? Intellectual property is certainly a concern. Absolutely. Yeah. What else? Reliability of the resources, most definitely, of the sources where this information's coming from, most definitely. Yep. Lacking a personal voice is a real, yeah, it's not as humanistic, is it? Yeah. Thank you. Yes, so you can pick up on all of the inconsistencies, most definitely. Yep.
Impact on the environment and sustainability, empowering AI?
Even saying thank you. There was an article not long ago saying thank yous having a huge impact on the planet to AI.
I'm a student and I don't like training somebody else's large language model for free. I think I should be paid to do that. So I won't use AI because
Wonderful.
I don't want to train it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep. So there are obviously a lot of barriers and some of them, we've got to navigate. Some of the research that tells us, some quotes up there, I'm glad that I'm not a young teacher because I fear this will eventually replace us. It's causing educators to rethink the very nature of teaching, learning. Only 33% of public school teachers, that study came out of America, reported feeling well prepared or very well prepared. All imaginable kinds of information and data can be found, so the quality and the value, varies tremendously. And plagiarism, of course, is a rapidly growing problem in academia. These quotes, this information, these sources are actually from the late 90s, early 2000s, and relate entirely to the internet being incorporated into education. The more things change, the more things stay the same. That doesn't mean that they're very real things for us to consider. Okay, we do have to be mindful of the way AI is impacting education. I mean, and you brought up some fantastic examples in the room. But I want you to just imagine for a second, if I told you that you had to go back and do your job in a world pre-internet, there'd be some benefits. And I'm sure in some ways that'd be quite a lovely change. But what about all of the things that you miss? How challenging would it be in education pre-internet if we decided to let all of the fears that we had in the late 90s and early 2000s get the better of us? For me, when I think about what the world looks like pre-internet and education in particular, and I'm of the generation that sort of had a foot on both sides of the fence. I started school, I remember in grade 2, getting taken to the principal's office where we got to see the fax machine working at Orbost North Primary School. They filed us through one group after the other. But then by the end of high school, the internet was very much part of study. But the thing I think about, if I think about education before the internet, is this beautiful piece of machinery that you see on the screen here. This is a Talker 2 280 Air BMX bike. It is my bike, not the actual one. It's a picture of one that's very much like it. And I know what you're thinking. I can see your faces there. Bubblegum pink, country Victoria, late 90s. Things are a bit tough. But I can assure you that this bike was so cool that it didn't even matter that it was bubblegum pink, right? But the reason that I think about this bike when I cast my mind back to what would happen if we didn't use the internet for education is that I used to have to write it to my grandparents when I was doing projects because they were the ones with a set of encyclopedias. I had to get on that bike, ride from one end of Raymond Island to another, which sounds like a long distance, not a small island that I was brought up on. But I used to have to ride to my grandparents' house on this bike in order to look at their set of encyclopedias. And when I got there, I had to be really hopeful that my elder cousins and my older sister hadn't already cut out pictures or words or pages of the things that I was using for my project because they were a shared resource. So if we think about this in terms of accessibility, I was lucky that I had a set of encyclopedias at my grandparents'. A lot of kids didn't. A lot of kids where I come from, or like me, certainly didn't have a set of encyclopedias in the house. I was lucky that I had a bike, right? So we have to think about inclusivity and accessibility and equity as well. So before the internet in education, think about what it would look like for you and try to shift the mindset. And this is a really challenging thing. I'm not 100% on board with AI, make no mistake. But I try to think about the positive aspects that AI can bring to my students, in particular in this UDL space, because the reality is the AI is here to stay. It's here. Whether we like it or not, it's here. So I think, okay, as a teacher, as an educator, what can I do to ensure that at least in my world, we're using it for the powers of good as opposed to the powers of evil? So for me, it's about reframing. It doesn't replace my expertise, it amplifies accessibility. That's what I try to think about when I'm using AI. How can I use it to amplify accessibility? And there's been some fantastic speakers across the last couple of days that have come up with some brilliant ideas about using AI to amplify accessibility. The reality is that we still provide the pedagogy and the content, and the AI provides the format conversion. Absolutely, you can put prompts in and AI will spit out a whole module for you. But I'm very intentionally going to give you an example of today of why that's not a particularly good idea. I'm sure it's something you've probably figured out already. But AI can be really powerful in providing some format conversion, which we're going to have a look at today. And as a result, more students can access the content in an optimal format for them. So why audio content? Why podcasting? Multiple means of representation, obviously alignment there with UDL. The same content in different format. And as I say, I'll even introduce 3 different types of podcasting that suit learners in different ways. Accessibility, it obviously supports people with visual impairments, dyslexia, ADHD, EAL students, the list goes on. Ich lerne seit 2 Jahren Deutsch auf Duolingo. Been learning German on Duolingo for 2 years, and I'm still terrible at it. The one thing that has taught me is how important having those different inputs is for my international students. I knew that learning at university in another language would be hard. I had no concept of how challenging that would be until I decided to go and teach myself another language. And I think podcasting enables us to have a different mode, because a really interesting thing that I found when I introduced the podcast to my students is that my EAL students listen to the podcast predominantly at half speed. And I thought, okay, I'm onto something here. This is really important. And that made far more sense to me, because I can, on Duolingo, the little owl talks at me really slowly and I think I'm really good at it until I try and watch a German TV show and I get completely lost. Okay, so podcasting supports that in a great way. Join and Play, the new emphasis UDL 3.0 on engagement and incorporating storytelling. Podcasting fits perfectly, of course, with storytelling. And the flexibility. Our students can learn while commuting, exercising, multitasking. Busy lives. There was another presentation this morning where one of the speakers' students were all working in excess of 20 hours a week. We can give them some parts of the curriculum, not all. Podcasting doesn't replace everything by any stretch, but we can give them some elements of the curriculum in a way that they can access it while they're on their commute, walking the dog, doing the gardening. And I know from my students that this is occurring. Also, we're taking the learning to where it's already happening. People are already listening. Hands up if you listen to podcasts on a monthly basis. Just about everyone in this room. Okay. According to some research, and there's a bit of argy-bargy between us and the Swedish about this, to be frank, they are claiming that they're the most avid podcasting listening nation on the planet. But the data that I found says that Australia leads the world in podcast listening. 20% increase over the past years. That was in 23-24. 48% of Australians listen to podcasts monthly. 65% of Australians aged between 18 and 39 listen to a podcast at least monthly. And this is the really interesting thing for me, is that 36% listen to be informed, with an additional 29% say they listen to be educated. And I want to introduce you on the next slide. Sorry, mate, lost it again. I want to introduce you on the next slide to my friend Craig, who got me set on my podcasting journey. This is Craig. He didn't pose for this particular presentation. These are a couple of headshots that he was doing for work. Craig is one of the 6 million Australians that listens to podcasts monthly. He is very much the traditional, non-traditional learner. So when I say that, he was terrible at high school. Absolutely couldn't stand being in a classroom environment. Failed at year 10, went and got himself an apprenticeship, did amazingly well in the vet space, was apprentice of the year at William Anglis TAFE in Victoria. He was a pastry chef by trade, a creative genius, but one of those students that I'm sure you're very familiar with that just can't stand the formal ways that we used to teach our students. And I remember having a conversation with him. You're still wondering why on earth have I got a picture of my friend up on the screen here? He was the one that started me on this podcasting journey, because I had a conversation with him one day and he said that he'd started listening weekly to this podcast about astronomy. And I said, what do you mean? I said, did you find a telescope? And I used the word find because he quite likes the hard rubbish collection, and he tends to bring home weird, wonderful things and have new hobbies every other week. And he said, no, I just love the podcast. At the time, it was the end of COVID, I could only get 30% of my students to my online lectures. And here's Craig, in a lot of ways, the world's worst student, someone that, really doesn't want to engage in educational processes at the best of times, listening for fun in his free time to a podcast about astronomy that he's never going to use. So he's doing it purely for his own personal growth, personal learning. And I thought there's got to be something in that. If this podcast can capture his attention for a period of time and he can use it to learn, then this is something that I need to start to try and incorporate with my students. And that's where my podcasting journey started, with that conversation. So less than 30% were attending our online tutorials. We put the podcasts up for that unit. First podcast, how many percent of our students do you reckon listen to it? Just under 90%. And that stayed pretty firm for the rest of the semester. Students absolutely loved it. And it was primarily because of that accessibility and flexibility. They could learn when they were walking the dog, doing the gardening, all of that sort of stuff. Busy students, busy lives, and podcasting really helped. So the 3 podcasting formats that I want to introduce you to, because obviously once I started, I realized how terrible my initial podcasts were. So I thought I'd better have a look and see what research says about podcasting. This is by a gentleman by the name of Drew from England. And he studied the world's most popular educational or informational podcasts that were available. He went through, the Apple podcast charts, and he grabbed the top 50 podcasts, and he had a good hard look at what they contained and what was going on in there. So not necessarily used in an educational environment, but used for educational purposes to convey information. And one of the things that I found really powerful and helpful was he categorized them into 3 different formats. The first one being the quick burst, which is a single key concept, delivered energetically, rapid reinforcement, 2 to 3 minutes. One really good bit of information, 2 to 3 minutes, that you can convey to your students. Normally, you'd probably make them in a series, but they can either be introduced to a topic or they can, get a quick refresher on a topic. The narrative podcasts, for those of you who are podcast fans, things like This American Life is a great example of a narrative podcast, which is story-driven and a deep exploration, and it supports memory through structure. And the chat show format is as it sounds. So that's where we're bringing multiple perspectives into the room, which I found to be an incredibly powerful thing. I could bring industry experts. I teach CAD, computer-aided design. So I could bring industry experts into the room and talk about what it's like to be a graduate draftsperson or someone who's been working in the industry for 20 years. Or one of my colleagues, and we did this in another unit, I pretended that I was the student that asked all of the questions that we wanted them to ask about the assessment task throughout the semester. Because that's nearly all of our communications about assessment tasks, isn't it? So what format do you want? All that sort of stuff. So we started thinking about different ways that we could use that chat show format. As Drew mentioned, the formats act as unique cognitive tools, different learning language functions. So, and they support varied learning preferences. Some people enjoy facts, some people like stories, some people like that discussion, okay? Like anything, really, we have different preferences. I've got 2 boys on the spectrum at home. If I gave one of my sons a narrative podcast, he would tell me, not particularly politely, about what I could do with my parables, right? Whereas my other son would like the deeply immersive, the storytelling elements with all sorts of audio going on, and he'd like to lose himself in that world for a little while. And podcasting, we can do either. And attention spans and opportunities for learning, quick burst versus sustained engagement. So what I want you to do now, we're going to have an opportunity to work in groups. It's enough of me talking. And we're going to start tinkering with these different podcasting formats. So the first thing that I'd love you to do is to just click on this QR code, if we can get this out of the way. And this will take you to a link. So we're going to use some AI prompts. That'll take you to a Google Doc that's got a series of AI prompts. We're going to go through them one after the other. So for those of you in the room, what I'd love for you to do is to find someone very close to you who's got a laptop open and who's comfortable in jumping on ChatGPT, or a phone, if you're happy to copy and paste on your phone. Copying and pasting on the phone is a bit of a challenge. The reason that I use ChatGPT in this example, the only reason is I know you can jump on it and not have to put in any passwords. But if you're already signed up to Copilot or Claude or something else, please feel free. That's a great question, thank you. But I just chose ChatGPT because I know you can jump on it and start typing away. So the first thing that we're going to do is to just check that out. And what I want you to do in some small groups is in about 2 minutes, pick one topic that you can teach in 3 minutes. So we're going to create a script for a quick burst podcast. And for those of you online, I want you to think about something that you would teach. And it can be, obviously, you're going to have, you know, some diversity on your tables, people learning in different areas, but just one thing that you can teach in 3 minutes. And if you can't think of anything, just put in the history of apples or something similar. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Okay. There's a couple of things that I just want to mention. The other thing that you'll see at the bottom of that Google Doc is a booklet, is a guide. So a guide, everything that I go over today and a considerable amount more is in that guide that you can use. So you don't have to remember anything that we do, any tool that we use. And there's also a separate guide on how to actually make the podcast as well. So there's a heap of information that you'll be able to take away with you. But obviously we can only get through so much today. The other really important thing that I discuss at pretty good length in the guide is, and we mentioned intellectual property being a very real concern at the start of the presentation, is a guide to what you should and shouldn't put into these AI, generative AI sites with regard to intellectual property, okay? For today, we're not going to upload anything. I do want you to know, if you haven't had a good muck around with it, you can absolutely put PowerPoints or slides or papers or all sorts of weird and wonderful things into your chat GPT to help you create a podcast script. We're not going to do that today for a couple of reasons. One, because you didn't know which topic you were going to choose until I told you to choose a topic 2 minutes ago. But two, I also want to show you that this isn't perfect by any stretch. The more information you put in, the closer it's going to get to the output that you're after. But with the caveat of, one, check your institute's policy regarding privacy. Most institutes will, if they haven't got one already, will be working towards creating one. And two, just think about, if I don't want this shared with the world, should I really be putting it into this to help me write a podcast? Okay. So we've got our idea. And the first thing we're going to do, and you'll see the prompts, and you can copy and paste the prompts that were in that Google Doc. This is a sort of a rough guide of what's in there. We're going to ask ChatGPT or Copilot or whichever program we're using to create a 2 to 3 minute quick burst educational podcast script about, and then put a bit of one sentence about your topic. We're also going to do a dot point where we're going to talk about our target audience. And there was some really interesting stuff that came up yesterday. One of the speakers here from University of Sydney about different technologies and being able to, the more we put in about diversity into our prompts, the better feedback we're going to get with regard to providing UDL for our students. So succinctly describe your students and just pick one. If you know, as long as it sort of makes sense, but it's an important part of the process, because you'll see that the chatbot does do a pretty good job of aligning it with your target group, and also just briefly a learning objective. So effectively, what I want you to do is just copy and paste, and that's the second half of the script, which has got the structure. And after you put that one in, then we prompt it. So type in this bit of information, copy and paste that bit of information, and then we'll run it. And we'll see what it comes up with. And we'll see, one, how good it is at understanding your topic, and two, whether it does a good job at contextualizing for your particular cohort. This is the second part that you put in. So in the document, it's got quick burst basic AI prompt. We've got initial prompt structure and accessibility features. And then you'll see where it says run prompt. Just work your way down. So you fill out the bits in that first initial prompt section, and then copy and paste both the structure and accessibility features, and then run the prompt. I should probably share this instead. Can I share this instead?
Switch profile.
So the bit that's highlighted there in blue is what we're going to put into it to run the first prompt. So as you start to run the prompts, you'll see that there'll be elements of it that are fantastic, and some of it that might not quite be right. Sorry, what did it come up? Got your whole script, yeah. Perfect, perfect. With emojis, yeah, complete with emojis. And remember, if you were so inclined, you could put your PowerPoint presentation in that you've used for however long and get it to do exactly the same thing. And just take the key points from a PowerPoint presentation, turn that into a quick burst, right? So at the moment, we're just giving it, you know, a sentence to work from. But the more tailored your prompts are, the better the output you're going to get, or the more accurate the output that you're going to get. Or you could get it to analyze a paper and to come up with the key bits of information, right? Okay. So moving right along, hopefully you've all managed to get the yeah, thanks, mate. Yep. Can I get a quick show of hands? Did it come out better than you thought, or worse? Better than you thought? About the same? Or completely useless? What on earth is this thing talking about? That's actually not too bad. All right. Considering how much information we gave it in the first place. Refinement prompts, you can now go back. Now I'm running a bit short of time already, so I'm going to keep moving through some of these things. But you could obviously say, give me a better hook, a different hook. Or you could ask it to use different language. Simplify the language, please. The language is too highfalutin. Keep it simple. You could make changes and adjust back and forth using follow-up prompts. There's a heap of information that I've put about different prompts and follow-up prompts and advanced prompts in the guides. There's a whole lot more than this. And of course, you know, tailor it to your own needs as well. Turning it into a podcast. All right, I'm gonna throw this over to the group. I can turn it into a podcast in 5 minutes and show you what that looks like, or we can keep writing the AI. Turn it into a podcast. Okay, so you're going to put the pressure on me, not you. Yeah, great, awesome, wonderful. And Ethan and I are under the pump now. This is good. Okay, so this is Adobe Podcast. For those of you, some of you in the room might be using far more advanced podcasting stuff than this. Wonderful, excellent. If you're already using Adobe Audition or you know, audio tools or any of those sort of things, wonderful. What you might like to think about, if that's you, is actually how could I get my students to generate podcasts for authentic assessment? All right, this might be the path you send them down rather than get them to learn audio editing suites, because this is so simple, it's not even funny. All right, so authentic assessment, podcasting is fantastic, and they can do something like this. It's wonderful. There is free versions, premium versions. The free version certainly does enough for students. All right, absolutely does. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick demo of how this works and highlight some of its accessibility features. So we are in. Who wants to hand me the script for their podcast? Down the back, we've got a taker. Okay. All right. 234. I'm going to have to take that up with me. Is that all right? Yep, wonderful. Oh, hello. I should have said to keep it PG. That's not true. Okay. All right. I'm going to do this sight unseen, right? I don't even know what this one's about, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to put my very terrible microphone on. Key point, because I want to show you how we can turn awful audio into good audio as well using AI. Right? Terrible headset microphone. Okay. Now, all I'm going to do is hit record. Hey there, welcome to another Quick Burst, your fast and fun business skills boost. Today's episode, the question funnel, how to ask smart questions that help you learn more faster. Picture this, you're at work and your team leader just said, we need to improve the customer experience. What does that even mean? Do they want faster service, better manners, free snacks? Here's what the question funnel comes in. I'm hearing that as I'm in like 1 second delay. But really awesome thing. You watch what this does, transcribing. And I've got this on the University of Sydney guest Wi-Fi network. So this is entirely however good your Wi-Fi network. And I say that coming from the University of Tasmania from the northwest. So I can assure you that ours isn't that flash either, right? But it will transcribe. And what it will do while it's transcribing is give me an automatic transcription that I can send. It also gives me the opportunity to make some adjustments to it, quite simply. So that should be here's, I go to edit, here's where the assessment funnel comes in. So I can change, first thing I can do that's really helpful with regards to transcription is I can change it. Thank you very much. The other things that I can do here that are quite powerful is that I can, if I play this back, now I'm going to test this out here, mate. See how we go, right? So if I play this back, your fast and fun business skills boost. Today's episode, the question, sounds absolutely horrendous, doesn't it? Because I've done it on these microphones. But what I can do is I can run a filter over it and I can enhance it. It gets rid of background noise. It amplifies the speech. AI makes this much prettier for me. Okay. Sorry? No, not exactly. That's a great question. No, that just edits the actual transcription. Sorry, for the online audience, yeah, the question was, if I change the transcript, will it change the audio? No, not specifically. But
your fast and fun business skills boost.
We're not going to get a great example of that over this speaker, I don't think. But I can assure you, if you run this AI filter, this is the most amazing thing I've seen in podcasting today. Yeah.
I'm not sure what learning management system you use, but if you use Canvas, have you tried Canvas Studio?
No, we use Milo. It's very different. Yeah. So no, I haven't tried it. So that's one thing that you can do, which makes a world of difference. The other thing that you can do is really easily at the start add things like music. So I can add a little short intro. And I can get that short intro to fade out. Next thing is done. I did.
Your fast and fun business skills boost. Today's episode, the question funnel.
Right, so you can add audio quite simply. I wish I could show the filter, but you're gonna have to trust me that it does a fantastic job at this. Yep.
I've got a question here.
Yes.
Yeah. So how much time does each student have for the free version? Or like how much space does it have or access to all these kind of options?
Look, we've run assessment tasks and the students never told me that they've run out. I think it's something like an hour a month or something like that. It's something pretty significant. I've never had a student come back to me. I mean, free versions are obviously limited, but certainly enough to make a podcast. Yeah. The students, the last one I did, the 10 to 15 minutes they could make. Yeah. So, and it was plenty for that. Yeah.
I know the other Adobe tools allow you to remove ums, which is really good if you've got somebody that does Does this do that?
Absolutely. And this is where it does edit the audio. So let's say that I really didn't want to add this. What does that even mean bit? If I was really not happy that I said that, if I hit delete and I hit play from here.
Learn more faster. Picture this. You're at work and your team leader just said, we need to improve the customer experience. Do they want faster service, better manners?
Gets rid of the whole thing.
Here's what
so if I say something really silly, I can edit it just like that, which is so much easier than doing in audio tools. The second thing, I'm going to get you to run a. Oh, yeah, right. We're going to do it, Ethan. You ready? Feeling brave? All right. We're going to go back. I'm going to get you to run a follow-up prompt, and we're going to get you to turn your quick burst into a chat show.
So what am I?
So we go back to the slides for a second. So for those online, we're just going to go back to the slides for a second. Okay. All right. So what I want you to do, quick burst into a chat show. This is the transformation prompt. It's in the Google Doc. You can copy and paste it. We're going to transform the quick burst script into a chat show where I'll play both the host and guest. Host is a curious interviewer who asks engaging questions geared towards the learning objectives. We can give it some extra prompts. What we want it to do is to create a two-way conversation. I'm going to show you how I record both in completely different voices. Okay, but we're going to do this with the prompt first. Sometimes hearing two voices. Obviously, you could do a reel. And again, in the guidebook that I give you, you can also use it to generate questions for a real guest. AI is really good at creating questions based on a guest's history, expertise, papers they've written, all that sort of stuff. But this one, we're just going to get them to transform the quick burst script that you've already written into a chat show. Okay? And then we're going to use two voices. And the reason that I'm showing you about these transformations is because, again, it's all about providing material in different ways to students. Because I think sometimes it's easy to think, well, I've given them an audio version of my PowerPoint presentation. Does a PowerPoint presentation work if it's just audio, right? We've got to think about the different ways. And this hopefully enables you to do that in a far more efficient manner. Hmm? I'll show you. You can. I've got an even better one for you. Even shorter. Yeah. Yep. Wonderful.
Not bad, but I think GAI is
Definitely. Yep.
and then they've just checked that.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's cool. So someone's already made one online. That's awesome. Yeah.
For just our online audience, I've just shown Mark the comment and the example that's come through from Wondercraft. So he's just having a look at it now.
And absolutely agree with the comment about GAI having issues. Yeah, the more information you put in, the better it comes out the other end. Noting that intellectual property is absolutely a concern, but the more you put in there, the better. Yeah.
And just a reminder for our online audience, if you do have any questions, please put them in Slido, and we will look.
And there's a bit of the structure as well, so we'll get that one in there. You're right. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, so you basically download it as an MP3 or a WAV file, and then you can either publish it if you want your students. You can. Some people have got real concerns about putting it on things like Spotify, because again, intellectual property. So some will just put it straight into your learner management system as an audio file and get students to download it. There's other podcast readers where they can download stuff off the computer. Yeah, it's sort of like the old way that we used to do podcasts, where you download a heap of things. And that enhanced speech, if you're having interviews with industry experts, you'll find that often, especially if you're on Zoom or something like that, you can record 2 audio channels of Zoom. Sometimes they'll speak straight to the laptop and you think, oh, that was the best interview, but their microphone was no good. And it does frustrate students. You can take that audio, put it into Adobe Podcast through the enhanced speech, and it comes out sounding studio quality. And I don't say that lightly. So it really does enable you to bring other voices into your podcasts. Yeah. Okay. So who's got a two-way script for me? I'm going to show you one last thing Yeah, let's have some fun with this. Okay. Oh, whichever's easiest. Okay, so I'm going to be, in this instance, I'm just going to read Clara's part. Okay. So this takes me back to Year 12 drama, right? You ready? Okay. So this website, which I've also linked to in the Word doc, is called 11 Labs. Hands up if you've heard of 11 Labs. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. Student told me about 11 Labs. She didn't want to use her own voice, so she used 11 Labs. Now, another thing that came up in a conversation earlier this morning was that AI dehumanizes. And it was mentioned again, and it doesn't sound human. And in a lot of instances, you're absolutely right. We've come a long way, you know, in relation to AI-generated voices. The closest thing to human is human, of course. What I love about 11 Labs isn't its text-to-speech, although its text-to-speech is as good as most. It's this thing called voice changer. So I'm going to just get my headphones on again. Okay. That's all right. Okay, so I'm Clara, and I'm friendly, and I'm confident. All right. Thanks, Jess. Happy to be here. This is one of those skills that seems small, but actually has a huge impact on animal health and behaviour. Every small thing has a huge impact on my dog's behaviour, I tell you. Right, so that's me, Clara. Now, I don't sound much of a Clara, but what I can do is to come over here, and I have already selected Sophia, which is a young Australian female, and there is thousands and thousands and thousands of voices to choose from. Again, if you put information into a website like this, you've got to assume that it's going to end up somewhere else that you might not like, right? That's the reality. So it's the same with every part of the internet. There's a caveat. Put information in here, it goes elsewhere. But if I, and I've got all these things. So this is the recording.
Thanks, Jess. Happy to be here. This is one of those skills that seems small, but actually has a huge impact on animal health and behaviour.
All right, so that's me. Now, got to get rid of this. Now, why is that not there? Oh, there we go. Generate speech. I've got things hidden underneath here. So I generate the speech, and I've got Sophia chosen over on the right-hand side here. I could go through and see what Bill, George, Charlie, Asher.
Happy to
so
be here. This is one of those skills that seems small, but actually has a huge impact on animal health and behaviour.
Gets all my inflections, all my enunciations, even my lovely bogan Tasmanian twang, right, into the speaker, okay? It's a fantastic tool, and I can create a two-way conversation that does, to the best of our ability, at least at this point, sound at least human.
G'day everyone, I'm Graham from Skill Up SA in South Australia. At this point, would you re-record the next part of that conversation and do it, and then Sophia would do her response and then the interviewer would do theirs?
Great question.
I guess what I'm saying is can this clunky process be done more streamlined so that one speaker does all of their spoken parts and then Sophia can do all of their spoken part?
Good question. At this stage, you've got to put up with the clunk, is the answer. So what I would do is download that now, and I would come over to Adobe, and as well as recording live, I can also add audio files into here as well. I can upload an audio file straight into there. So I'd record all the others. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Sam from Quality College of Australia, from Adelaide as well. Just wondering, obviously we've generated the script using AI, then verbally we're recording it all and then translating it all or changing the voice. Could we just use text to voice software, or is that doesn't sound as realistic?
It doesn't sound as realistic.
Okay.
You absolutely can. It's quicker and it makes it less clunky, and you can put that straight in there. In my experience, the students won't like it. They don't tend to like the genuinely AI generated voices. Whereas I've tested this on a few of my groups that are cheeky enough to tell me if they thought it was me, and they didn't pick up on it at all. They thought I had a second guest in the room. Yeah.
Oh, it's Rebecca, the chair here. I just wanted to first of all apologise. My inner high school teacher just came out then. Couldn't help myself. And I do have a question from online. So I'll go there and then I'll come over to you if that's okay. Do you upload the podcast directly into the LMS? If so, do you find there are any issues with listening on the go?
Great question. At the moment, and I'm doing some research with a group from our education department that are teaching graduate teachers as part of their GTPA. And there are concerns about copyright and privacy of that material. So we are putting that into our LMS. We have set up, there are some podcast capture apps that they can put their downloads into. It's not ideal. Preferably, and you can put stuff into Spotify for free and your students could grab it for free. Again, the problem is that that's out there for the world to hear. So if you're okay with that, that's the most convenient way for a student. But I would certainly ask a few questions around your institution about whether people are comfortable with that or not. But yeah, the way we're doing it is LMS. It's not ideal, but they still listen. Yeah.
Hi, it's Elise from RMIT in Melbourne. With the 11 Labs, because I never heard of it, really great to know about it. Do you know much about, like, have people consented to their voices being represented in that data set, or is it a bit like the other AI tools?
So if anyone wants a good side hustle, you can add your own voice into 11 Labs and you get paid in credits or US dollars a month. So it's all people that have absolutely consented, yeah. Whether I'd want my voice in there for future, I don't know. But yeah, certainly, yeah, it's a pretty legit sort of setup, yeah.
It's Rebecca, the chair here. I just wanted to say we have officially opened up for Q&As. So anyone online, my Slido's just reloading. So please put your questions there and we can get to those.
Yeah, my name's Scott, and I was just curious because it says, young Australian female and things like that. Does it do other accents or dialects? And things
It does do accents. They're just starting to work on dialects in different languages. My German is nowhere near good enough to tell you how accurate and how effective that is. The other accents certainly sound like you can go full BBC newsreader and it sounds like BBC newsreader and all that sort of stuff. But so far as other languages, that's what's next, I think, getting that right. Yeah.
Getting my steps up.
Thank you. Elise from RMIT again. I think this is brilliant. This probably be my favorite workshop.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're open to us trying to rerun your workshop with our institutions to kind of spread what you're doing, because it's fantastic.
Please do.
Happy? Yeah.
Please do. So the slides that you've got and my emails, all that stuff, reach out. As I say, so the research that Drew did was about podcasts that were made for the mass audience. So the podcast, we've created a suite of podcasts. So we're digging into what are the design elements of podcasts that make these things more accessible to students and more engaging. So it's a really interesting space. I'm happy to share. The other how-to guide will be enough for your students to make podcasts too, by the way. There's an Adobe Express page or whatever, Adobe Express page. That'll be enough for your students to figure out how to do it too. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah from the University of Newcastle. I was wondering if you could touch base on what are the practicalities of when you're training students? Does it take, are you doing this in a lecture, tutorial, workshop? How long does it take? What do you provide to students so they feel like confident in using this?
Yeah, great question. So I teach CAD, computer-aided design. They're all pretty good and pretty computer literate. So more so than me, certainly in the CAD space, just quietly. But so they pick up on it quicker. I'll put it this way. It's much easier for me to teach a group of students than it is a group of teachers. Yeah. That's not to say they don't need support in an ongoing way, but there's so many great videos on YouTube out there as well. I mean, yeah, they'll ask questions, but I've never had students come back to me and say, this is too hard. And of course, this is just one choice of an assessment. We don't say you must make a podcast. We do it in place of a presentation or similar. Yep.
Rebecca, the chair again. There's no more questions in Slido, but I will try to open up if there's anyone online, if anyone had their hand up or has another question to ask. We're not quite sure if we can hear you or not. While we're testing that out, I'm going to hand over to Sean for one more question.
Thanks a lot. Just any interesting issues of ethics that you've come across in relation to some of this? Just in any insights that you may have had.
Not so much about ethics. A lot about copyright has come up. To be honest, we're pretty early on in the journey, but nothing that I could, no ethical. There are ethical concerns, I think, with any shift to AI in particular. But no, I haven't got a good case study for you. No.
Thank you. Zenchi from CIT in Canberra. Just wondering, what do you ask them? Are you assessing them on their CAD knowledge? What, in a practical sense,
Yeah.
is this just a whimsy?
Sorry,
Is it
yeah, I
fun,
should,
or is this, yeah?
So the that particular assessment task is all about design thinking and how they applied design thinking to their CAD models. So it's a more, should explain that. It's not about their technical CAD. It's about the journey that they've taken to create they solve problems to address a sustainable development goal. They use design thinking, so they talk about all of those concepts. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That was ticks off the self-reflection for everyone online. I don't think we have any more questions online. There's one more in the audience, so we'll have time for this one.
My worry listening to the podcast, and I think it's fabulous because I do love podcasts, is as a student, if you're producing an assignment, it's harder to put your references in there because it's not like that formal, essay or anything where you can reference because it's just spoken. And my worry as a student getting my lecture delivered through podcast is, again, with a lecture, you can pause it, you can take your notes down, you've got the slideshow there so you can reference it. But I find when I listen to podcasts, I don't find them as credible a source as anything written or even a video, because I'm like, okay, so I can't say in my reference as per, minute 35, second 20, XYZ. I find them quite hard to navigate. Like, they're informal and they're great for an idea, but they're not good for referencing. Anyway, would there be a way to incorporate that for students to do their final projects, or for you to deliver a lecture through podcast that a student can then feel confident referencing back to, instead of just being more conversational? Because they just don't feel very academic to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And credibility is certainly a question that comes up, and I think you're dead right. I've only used them for a few reasons in my classes, and that is first and foremost to have those chat show interviews with industry experts. So for me, predominantly, it's been about bringing an industry voice into the mix. So could you potentially quote, one of the experts? I mean, APA 7, I did find one day that there is a little element for that. In relation to me bringing up papers and stuff that I've written, then what I would normally do if I'm presenting something a bit more formal, I would say, as per Drew 2017, and still give a reference list. It's not, podcast used in isolation is not the answer. Podcast as a subsidiary to other things is really powerful, because you might be, okay, I've got this exam tomorrow, but I want to go to the gym tonight, and I can refresh my memory. It doesn't replace everything, and I don't think it ever could. But the chat show certainly bringing in other perspectives, and the narrative stuff. And we didn't get onto narrative. That's where the real fun happens. Narratives where, okay, tell the story from Joan of Arc's perspective, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can have a lot of fun and really engage your students in completely different ways. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. We're going to have to leave it there. First of all, I'd like to give a big shout out to Ethan.
Yes.
What a hero. We could not have done that without him.
Love that one.
And then also, please warmly thank Mark for being so generous, and what a great workshop. So thank you so much.
Thank you.